Can I now invite the first candidate to speak, and that is Senator Sarah Ferguson, please.
This is an important election. State spending keeps rising and our income is falling. At the moment, we have assets to cover this, but we have fewer people paying tax and no new source of income for the states to balance this. Last year, we reduced the marginal rate by 1%. This has reduced states' income by £8 million. Removal of the deemed distribution has lost us at least another £6 million. Not a lot in the scheme of things, but 8 million here, 6 million there, soon adds up. And the number of people paying tax at 20% has halved from 12,200 to 6,800. They now pay 47% of tax, while those paying at marginal rates pay 52% of the total. 6 years ago, the marginal rate payers paid 41%, and the 20% payers paid 59% of the total. The tax burden is growing on Middle Jersey. The GVA figures are encouraging, but if the increased business is with trading companies, companies do not pay tax. When the financial services industry originally arose in Jersey, care was taken by Senator Maclean to ensure that Jersey did not adopt policies to which critics would point and say, "You're a tax haven." We have been under pressure from outside agencies regarding our tax system. We need to re-examine it to put the island back on the principled path charted by Cyril Maclean. I'm the chairman of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, and we have examined the budget. One conclusion is that we have a deficit, in total over 100 million, and around 50 million of that on current account. Some of this is structural, and the only way to deal with a structural deficit is to increase income, which usually means taxes, and reduce spending, which could mean services, but in my experience, efficiencies cut costs, not services. But all that has been left until after the elections. On top of this, we have proposals for various property taxes, including a recommendation on centralising the rates, which will tear the heart out of the parish. You will hear many promises during elections. I merely ask you to ask, how much will it cost and where will the money come from? This is a very important election. Your vote is your voice. It matters. Please use it. And please remember Sarah Ferguson when you vote.
Okay, next speaker, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Routier. For many islanders, the population issue is a priority. However, views across our community vary widely, from having a closed door to the other extreme of unlimited business licenses. The interim population policy approved by the state seeks to balance the demands of our island. The new states will need to incorporate the views of islanders when finalising the new framework, which includes all aspects of island life: the environment, the economy, and community. When all views have been collated, we will be in a better position to know what skills and size of population is needed. The Controls of Housing and Work law I guided through the states is deliberately structured to adapt to meet our community aspirations. In recent days, we have heard comments regarding education. It should be recognised that our schools and colleges are producing some well-educated students. However, perhaps we need to refocus the curriculum to ensure that skills, aptitude, and desire for work required by employers are taught to students. Work-ready students will reduce the need to bring people into our island. Our island businesses need a fiscal and regulatory environment which encourages growth. It must not be forgotten that the wealth generators pay taxes to fund the services our community require. However, controlling the level of taxes must be a priority for a stable and prosperous economy. As Assistant Chief Minister, I have undertaken and completed several significant complex projects. This year I led the debate of the Charities Law, which was enthusiastically welcomed by the voluntary and community sector, and I hope, if re-elected, to progress the next phase of that law. I also want to ensure that the inclusive equality strategy for people with disabilities, started by the Social Policy Unit in the Chief Minister's Department, is finalised. I also want to progress the new mental health and capacity law and to conclude the complex access to justice review. All of these pieces of work require careful and thorough reviews of policies and law drafting, and then importantly, implementing recommendations. There are still lots to do. Now that we are considering the options for a new hospital building, I will be putting pressure on the new health minister to focus a real energy on social services for people with mental health issues and for children with, and adults with learning disabilities. These are challenging times which require clear thinking. I do hope that I have shown that I have the skills, compassion, business sense to make sound decisions. If you would like me to continue working for you, I'd be pleased if you consider me for one of your votes. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Young. I'm Deputy Officer for St Bullard's, District Number 1, elected following careers in the public and private sectors and previously Chief Officer of Planning. I'm Chairman of the Environment Scrutiny Panel and held many public hearings, including energy policy and bus services in rural areas, which I know affects St Wands. As a backbencher, I've gained State's agreement to many members' propositions, important changes to the island plan, including a new policies for over 55 homes, citing this and all parishes, amendments to planning law and other things. There are huge challenges ahead of our ministers. I want to talk about one or two. Jersey's economy has fallen by 16% in the recession, and the finance industry by a third, and continues to fall, last year 3%. Now we must heed these signs and encourage new enterprises and remove unnecessary cost in bureaucracy. We develop creative in our IT sectors and seize new opportunities. For example, renewable energy technology, which will create jobs. We must support tourism and expand event-led tourism. Just look at the success of the Broadcast Festival and Jersey Live, and there are many others. But of course, there is still much pressure of development fueled by our rising population. And the island plan must be rigorously applied and our coast protected, especially St Wands Bay, Leyland Headlands and the North Coast. These are all of international importance, but not only, they're vital for our tourism economy and our quality of life. We must keep our coastal national park unspoiled whilst enabling its amenities to be enjoyed by everybody. But of course, money. The 2015 budget has turned its back on decades of financial prudence. Our government now spends more than it receives. The continued growth in public spending can no longer be paid for. So we have to review our spending priorities and urgently reform the public sector, reviewing layers of management to ensure they add value to frontline services and health and education, which we have to protect. Above all, we need to improve our government. 7 of the current ministers are candidates for a re-election on this platform. Several have been in office for 6 years. We need our new government to build consensus rather than encourage adversarial party politics. We need it to restore lost trust and rebuild public confidence. I ask you to ask, have our present ministers delivered joined up and inclusive governments? Are you confident they have the ability to succeed? You have a choice, either voting for the same or voting for the change. We need ministers who have the ability to take a fresh approach. I have that capability and experience to deliver the changes which people want to see. I humbly ask for your vote as Senator. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Andrew Green. You just have to remember the colour on election day. It is both an honour and a privilege to be able, for the first time ever, to address my home parish. The parish where Jill and I have lived and brought up our family for 30 years, over 30 years in fact. But I proudly represented St Helier as a deputy for 2 terms. I believe that I have delivered both as a minister and as a backbencher. Time doesn't allow me to list these achievements, but if I had to pick one, it would be the Housing Transformation Programme, transforming homes, transforming lives. My plan was described by independent experts as honest and courageous. You know, Jersey is still battling its way out of one of the deepest worldwide recessions ever known. It's been hard, very hard, and it still is for many ordinary, hard-working folk. For example, we have much to be grateful for. We have weathered the storm better than many jurisdictions. For example, with relatively stable house prices. No London bubble, no Southern Ireland crash. But like all Western communities, one of the biggest challenges that we face is often referred to, or what is often referred to as the ageing community. But I see this both as a challenge and an opportunity to use the knowledge and experience of older folk, a challenge to ensure inclusion, not exclusion. Appropriate housing and support are essential in supporting folk in their own home. A home that has its own front door, a home that they can call their own, a home that is supported if required. That's my vision. Dignity, care and support for our older folk. Not driving people inappropriately into nursing homes, but supporting them to live independently as much as possible with services that they might require, such as meals, cleaning, etc. The question is how and where. The challenge is not going to go away. We must plan for the future. We need to do things differently. And essential to this will be the development of a village plan. St One's done a fantastic job with its village development. It has been a shining example to other parishes in providing homes for the elderly. And I understand that a village plan is now being worked on, and I would urge all parishes to do that. I want to build on the highly successful deposit scheme that allowed over 50 young families to fulfil the dream of home ownership, to bring in other schemes such as rent to buy. This is where you rent for 5 years and that becomes your deposit and then you buy your home. I've got lots of ideas on that, but please speak to me afterwards if you'd like to discuss my views. If you want a new person as senator that has experience, courage, vision, thinks independently but can work collectively with a track record of getting things done, please give me one of your votes. Go Green 14.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There's been a little bit of excitement among the candidates tonight because a number of them live in St One's and they've been looking forward to telling you that this evening, as if you're going to be much easier on us with the questions. But anyway, good evening. My name is Lyndon Farnham and I live in St One's. I was first elected to the States as a deputy in 1999. Stepping down in 2005 to focus on my family and business commitments, returning in 2011 when I was elected senator. I am the serving Assistant Minister at Home Affairs and I currently have responsibility for the Jersey Fire and Rescue Service and the prison service, and I know how proud we all are of our excellent emergency services, but I have been especially proud to have served during a time when we have seen many improvements, including positive changes to the police force leading to greater public confidence. And I'm pleased to report this evening that crime in Jersey continues to fall. I have successfully brought a number of propositions to the state since being re-elected, including a move to introduce political accountability for our justice system, and I now serve on the Justice Advisory Panel and the Bailhache Consultative Panel. I am the immediate past president of the Jersey Hospitality Association and continue to champion tourism as an important pillar of our economy. I fully support the long overdue rejuvenation of Fort Regent, and I'm leading a campaign for a new 50-metre competition pool for the island, and my appeal here is, if we're going to have a new pool, let's do it properly. I also led the campaign to keep the island-wide mandate on the office of Senator, which I'm pleased to say is alive and well, and long may it continue, and I'm also going to vote yes for keeping the constables. If you elect me, I shall be seeking the position of Economic Development Minister, not least because I believe that we must now put economic prosperity firmly back to the top of the agenda, because in real terms, despite the good news we've had that the economy is levelling off, it's still at its lowest level since 1998. From agriculture and the rural economy, to sports and event-led tourism, to fintech and the digital economy, to economic diversification and small business development, it's time to act. It's time to introduce the policies that will return strength and drive and energy to our economy. Now, there is still a widespread belief in the island that the states are not performing effectively. The main concerns are that some politicians are motivated more by self-interest or party interests than the interests of the island, and that some simply do not have the knowledge, skills or experience to be able to do the job. And there is a lot to do to safeguard our future prosperity, for which we need people with real experience. We need people who are sensible and able and proficient. So please use and choose your representatives carefully. I do not favour party politics, I favour team politics. I favour working together for Jersey. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk this evening about population and migration, which is a thorny issue because people have strong views upon it and there is no easy solution. As a result of our economic success and because Jersey is a wonderful place to live, the population has risen steadily over the last 50 years from 60,000 to 100,000 and shows no signs of abating. People are obviously concerned about the effects of this increased population on the environment, on water supplies, on hospitals and social services, on the infrastructure and so on. Can we do anything about it? There are two things beyond our control. The first is the birth rate. The statistics show that during the years 2012 and 2013, natural growth, that is the excess of births over deaths, was 400 and 298 respectively. There is nothing we can do about that. The second thing is that we are all living longer, and we probably don't want to do anything about that. Even without migration, the population will increase. Migration figures disguise another uncomfortable fact. People come, but also go. The net annual inward migration over the last 10 years has been 300. Between 2001 and 2011, 7,000 new people came in, but 4,000 left, including a number of Jerseymen and Jersey women. The culture of the island is gradually changing. Many people don't understand what a constable or centenier does, or a bailiff. This is a serious issue for those who love Jersey's traditions, as many migrants learn to do, and don't want the island to become indistinguishable from England. Education can mitigate these problems, but that is another story for another day. It is very important that net inward migration is controlled. We should not stop it because there are skills that we must import and the economy must grow to provide the tax revenue that the public services require. But the foot must not come off the brake, which is where it now is. The Control of Housing and Work Law of 2012 gives wide powers to control both residence and employment. Keeping everyone happy is impossible. But the Chief Minister and Senator Routier have done, in my view, a remarkable job in balancing the needs of the economy with the government's wish to minimise increase in the population. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris Magee. I'm 25 years old. I have a law degree from the University of Edinburgh and Oslo. I've worked in the retail, finance and hospitality industries. I've written all my speeches from scratch and you can find them at youtube.com/Chris Magee for Senator. I'm at times unfairly branded as the cannabis candidate. I do not support the current practice of denying those who are suffering access to medicinal cannabis. I do not support continuing the economically unsustainable, scientifically discredited and morally unjustifiable policy of cannabis prohibition. But that's all I'll talk about that tonight. Moving on to other issues. The latest Global Financial Centres Index rated Jersey as 62 out of 83 financial centres based on various data, including the views of international financial services professionals. That's in the bottom quarter, behind the internationally renowned finance centres such as Kazakhstan and Glasgow. Jersey has fallen almost 20 places in the last 6 months alone. Even then, it was only just in the top half. We've seen the finance industry, and I hesitate to call it an industry because nothing is actually produced, in the GVA report showing that the sector is down once more, having already contracted by a third. The goose is looking somewhat less golden than it has in the past. I know what we should do. Let's use taxpayers' money to build offices for the banks who had a hand in the creation of the global financial crisis in the first place. Great idea. Education. The Education Minister has said that, quote, every state's member of the last 20 years should be embarrassed by Jersey's education system. He tells us this after receiving a paycheck for the past 3 years to run the education system and after standing down. Why are we shutting the door after the horse has bolted? Why did he not speak out before? Speaking out is an action often frowned upon by some of those in the States Chamber and has now been enshrined under the guise of collective responsibility. Very nice language, collective responsibility. But what does that mean in practice? It means toe the line, shut your mouth, or you're out the door. And they say party politics doesn't exist in Jersey. Think about that. Our small businesses are being steadily strangled by excessive taxation and regulation. Tens of thousands are living paycheck to paycheck, with 42% of islanders struggling just to make ends meet. There are 4,000 alcoholics, 10,000 problem drinkers. There are 11,000 prescriptions of tramadol, i.e. synthetic heroin, being dished out left, right and centre. The island is in debt. The government spends more money than it has. The results of the last referendum were ignored. 20,000 signatures against the introduction of GST, ignored. Some of the other candidates are trying to abolish the position of senator, yet here they are, asking for votes to be a senator. They will tell you that education and health needs to be, quote, turned upside down, and that they're the ones to do it. They're also the ones who waited until election time to tell you what you already knew. I'm not running for senator, so I can tell you what to do and how to do it. I'm not running for the money. In fact, I will donate 10% of my salary if elected to local charitable causes. I'm not doing it for fame. You won't find my face on my election posters. I'm running because I'm sick and tired of what we've been getting. And if you agree, vote Chris Magee. Thank you very much.
Good evening. This is my 10th Hustings speech. You can see my previous ones on my page at www.reformjersey.je. I'm pleased to be in St. Ouen, where I made my home when I first came to Jersey 42 years ago. It's a long way from St. Helier, but the growing population should serve us all. Concern us all. We need to balance the need of businesses with our desire to preserve the character of Jersey, its countryside and green spaces, without packing people into overcrowded high-rises in St. Helier. We have an interim population policy allowing for a net inward migration of 325 people a year, though targets are not often met. So where will these people go? You'll hear that growth is one of the mechanisms that will pull us out of our current financial difficulties and provide for an ageing population. But this is a short-term solution. It's like pyramid selling. With a housing shortage, how will our young people ever get a foot on the housing ladder? We could well be walking into a social and economic disaster. We must have the political will to use the tool we have, the control of housing and work law, to keep the population within sustainable limits. The law is simply not being policed. Ministers will tell you that numbers are under control. This is not true. Some companies disregard the law and use licences designed for entry-level posts that could easily be filled by locals. Those who try to use locals lose their licences. Applying this law as it was intended is a priority. But businesses must play their part, employing people on fixed-term contracts while training their successors and offering training posts to school leavers. We've heard much about the need for schools to provide vocational training to supply the needs of the job market. This works well for some students, especially those who are practically minded, and we need to provide better facilities for this training. But most need a good academic education that will prepare them to be able to adapt to changing markets. What we do need is even better careers teaching that focuses on the opportunities available locally and the educational routes that students must take to get there. We must ensure that all, even those who take up apprenticeships when leaving school, have access to higher education when they need it. This could be achieved through business sponsorship, which would encourage students to return when they're graduated, but we still need an effective grant system that's based on a realistic parental means test. Reform Jersey policies are solutions-based and result from listening to the needs of all sections of the community. We're not divisive, but we'll seek consensus with others in the States. If you want action, please vote Anne Southern.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As one or two candidates have already said, it's nice to be spending an evening at home. Well, almost. It's been an honour for me to serve as Chief Minister for the last 3 years, and during those 3 years, I've sought to build consensus, face difficult issues, and make decisions. Tonight, I'd like to talk about preparing for our future. One of the constant temptations for politicians and governments is to make short-term, politically popular decisions which are not always in the best long-term interest of the community. We know that in common with many countries, we do face challenges in the coming years. The ageing population, long-term health conditions, supplying affordable homes, rising costs of social protection, population and migration, and land capacity issues, to name just some of them. At the start of this government, we agreed that we should plan more holistically for the long term. This is a difficult area. Asking and answering the question, what sort of Jersey do we want to build for the future? But nonetheless, it is important that we ask, and it is important that we decide together what that future will be. During the last 3 years, we've made good progress, particularly the Treasury Department, where they've delivered a medium-term financial plan looking at 3-year budgeting. A great start. Of course, we know that there are lessons that have been learned for the next plan in 2016. They've also delivered a long-term capital plan, a long-term revenue plan, and a long-term tax policy. We've developed an energy strategy for the next 50 years. We've agreed changes to the state's employees' pension scheme, stopping the unaffordable final salary scheme. We've introduced the long-term care benefit, supporting those who need care in later life. We've invested for the long term in liquid waste. We're transforming the health service and starting to plan for a new hospital. We've transformed social housing. We've made savings across states' departments. But we know that there is more work to do, removing inefficiency and controlling spending. Over the next few years, the government will need to create balance between economy, community, and environment, ensuring that our island is one of opportunity and prosperity, fostering a community that is caring, healthy, and vibrant, and preserving this beautiful and special place for future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, much has been achieved. It would be an honour for me to receive one of your votes on election day to build a healthy and secure future for us all. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Maclean. I was elected Senator in 2008 and since then have served as Minister for Economic Development during the most severe global financial crisis imaginable. I'm extremely proud to have had the opportunity to serve my island and our community on important local issues as well as on the international stage. I've worked hard together with colleagues to build Jersey's reputation abroad, developing trade links and securing inward investment to boost our economy, its diversification and local jobs. A strong economy benefits all islanders and helps to keep taxes low. We've invested in supporting startups and small businesses across all sectors, the lifeblood of any community and economy. We've invested to boost innovation, new technologies, the creative and digital economies. As a result, the economy is improving, and a number of sectors, including agriculture and tourism, have seen growth returning in 2013. The success of the economy as a whole is, of course, heavily influenced by the financial services sector, whose performance and profitability has declined since its peak in 2008. But this is almost entirely due to the low interest rate environment. There are, of course, still threats ahead, and there's much to do, and many islanders are still struggling to make ends meet. I want to see unnecessary red tape, regulation and legislation cut across the whole of government. It represents a barrier that strangles businesses, prevents small businesses from growing and employing people, and frustrates islanders. I want to increase efforts to lower the cost of living by strengthening the competition law and consumer groups to target lower energy costs and lower food. I want to see skills and training progress developed and, importantly, aligned to industry needs to ensure more local jobs for local people. That's, ladies and gentlemen, how we deal with our immigration pressures. I want to see the cost of government controlled rather than the soft option of tax rises that hurt islanders and the economy. A good start to controlling costs must be a cap to the number of employees in the public sector. Capping staff numbers is possible because the public sector has an 8% turnover of staff annually. It just needs strong vacancy management. I want the income support system reviewed to ensure fairness and value. I want to see Jersey aspire to build a world-class, modern and innovative healthcare and education system. With courage and vision, and by embracing new technologies and new ideas from around the world, we can turn today's problems into tomorrow's opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be represented by a strong and independent views and a proven track record, the determination to drive positive change and a vision for the future, I ask you to consider giving me one of your votes on October the 15th. Thank you.
Mr Constable, ladies and gentlemen, well, I'm not from St Wands, I'm from St Saviour, but it is nevertheless great to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been Treasury Minister for the last 6 years, which has coincided with, as we've heard from other candidates, the world's worst financial crisis that we've seen in decades. And that has been very difficult for many islanders. Ladies and gentlemen, the easiest thing to do in politics is to put difficult decisions off. And someone asked me at the weekend whether I enjoyed taking poison chalices like the Treasury post. The answer is that nobody really likes doing that. But politics and good political service is about doing just that, serving, trying to solve difficult issues, not putting difficult decisions off. And that is one of the reasons why this election is perhaps more difficult for me than others. During this election campaign, you will hear a lot about public spending. There is, ladies and gentlemen, 2 reasons why public spending has been rising. Firstly, we need to spend more money on healthcare because there is an ageing population, and that's a good thing, but we need to find the money to pay for it. Secondly, in a recession, you need to spend more money. You need to spend more money on helping people getting back to work and on bringing forward projects like capital and infrastructure. And that's exactly what we've been doing. We've been actually tackling economic problems during a recession, and we've not been putting difficult decisions off. One of the other reasons why this election is perhaps quite difficult for me is this issue of this property tax review. And it has been a great deal of concern and almost pain for me that the property tax review which we've set out has caused so much anguish. And I'd like to say 3 things to you tonight, and this is the first hustings I'm saying this. Firstly, the property tax review is a consultation. There is no, Mr Constable, ladies and gentlemen, proposal to centralise parish rates paid by householders. I'm the son of a constable, and I understand the voluntary system as the backbone of this parish and the parochial system, and that should not change. No one would suggest replacing a voluntary system with paid civil servants, and I'm not. Secondly, I have no intention of increasing property taxes on renters. Thirdly, I want to improve the house purchase affordability, and I want to improve the affordability for renters. Fourthly, I want to raise more money from those that can afford to pay it, like, for example, UK companies renting in St Helier with offices. Those are the issues of the tax policy review, not perhaps some of the things that you've heard. Thank you very much indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be back in St Owen's, where I probably had the happiest time in my career setting up St Owen's Village Surgery. I was reflecting today on what had made my time at St Owen's so special. Being on call 24/7 may sound exhausting, but it meant that I witnessed and understood every medical emergency, birth, death that my patients went through. It was a privilege to come back to families I'd grown up with the training and education to diagnose your problems, be able to ease pain and bring comfort. It's truly a gift. During that time, I had instant feedback from my receptionist, Sylvia, who would inform me of any grumbles or comments that were less than complimentary as the day went on. Being prepared to acknowledge and learn from them meant they became less frequent. And I was also fortunate to have my husband, Innes, and Jennifer King to give a second opinion if ever I was unsure. In those days, being a professional was equated with the values of integrity, altruism, and expertise. Harold Shipman has changed all that. Doctors have become part of a whole system of care. We are watched. We have entered a world of accountability, performance management, clinical guidance, the healthcare market, words of surveillance, of suspicion, words of requirement, reward, and punishment. We hear about systems and safety and standards, and the world has changed and doctors are no longer trusted. The art of care has transformed into a machinery of care. The system now gives us feedback as well as the patient, and this can lead to a competitive atmosphere that sets professionals against one another. We are seeing demoralisation, fear, and loss of those professional qualities of integrity, altruism, and expertise as we concentrate on surviving the day. If governance, however, is done in a safe environment, it can be very different. Noticing higher death rates, higher rates of admissions, or different prescribing habits, we can find out what our colleagues are doing and think about how to improve and learn from them. Excellent systems exist within Dutch and German hospitals where staff sit down to discuss what could have gone better and debrief at the end of the day in the same way as I used to with my receptionist. By stepping out of the surgery and into politics, I hope to have the chance to create a learning environment where healthcare professionals, management, the community and patients can learn together and thrive for the benefit of all. If you share this vision, then please vote for me, Dr. Zoe Cameron, on the 15th of October. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Richardson, and tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about political reform. We obviously need political reform. That is quite apparent. As you can see, there is no appetite to lose the post of senator. At the last referendum, I voted for the constables to be out, or at least I would prefer to have put them in a separate assembly, where they would be in charge of certain scrutiny matters, be invited to vote, join the states, and when invited for relevant debates and vote on these issues. But their priority, I feel, is in parish issues. I know that the constables are the backbone of Jersey life, but because they need hopefully to get to know most of their parishioners, that shouldn't leave them too much time to deal with other matters. To back my reasoning, I will cite the example of the ex-constable of St Brilla's, Mike Jackson. He took up the post of Transport Minister during his time in the States. He failed to get re-elected because many people felt that he had neglected his parish duties. The second reason why I think there should be the constable should be out of the States is because 11 out of 12 got elected recently without being challenged. This is quite evidently quite a different type of vote to the senatorial vote, where we get hung from pillar to post at every hustings. I suggest that that vote is probably nearly paternalistic. There's nothing wrong in principle with this, but I do feel that dealing with somebody's domestic problems at one end of the scale and then dealing with hedge funding the state's funds at the other end are not necessarily compatible. I stand also for change. I believe that Jersey should work more closely with our neighbours of Bailhache of Guernsey in many ways, finding cost savings. By this, I mean such things as law drafting, or even negotiating tax agreements. Secondly, our institutions such as Jersey Financial Services Commission and Jersey Financial Limited could share their regulation and promotional work. This may be difficult to achieve, but that could save many millions. The combination of the two is greater than the two working apart on the same agenda. Cost savings need to be made to cover our deficit. That is obvious. I do not believe in increasing taxes. There are several other changes I feel need to be made. We need an environment minister who has teeth. If we had had one, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we would have avoided that green sludge in St. Owen's Bay, those endless debates about Plymouth, those traffic jams, that creeping urbanisation of the countryside, and some of the worst housing developments. We need to prioritise town developments over country ones. This will keep St Helier vibrant and keep the countryside beautiful for our visitors. We need to keep a conservation of our local heritage, a population balanced, financially balanced books, vibrant, educated and forward-thinking Jersey. Please vote for David Richardson. I humbly beseech you. Thank you.
Good evening, St. Ouen. It's a privilege to be here tonight. I'm going to start by saying that I don't live in St. Ouen. I'm going to say that I wasn't born in St. Ouen. And as you can tell, I do have many friends and acquaintances in this parish. I've served my apprenticeship, I think, for the last 9 years by serving 3 terms as the senior deputy for Kennebain Lamoy, a big mixed district. And I am a firm believer, I'm a bit old-fashioned, I am a firm believer in one becoming experienced in the ways of the states by working as a deputy before one puts one's name forward as a senator, as we see with Senator Gorst, Senator Maclean, Senator Ossoff and others. I was one of only 7 deputies that supported reform of the states in the great big, what I would call cock-up, that was the rejected referendum. I'm still angry about that. I wrote to Senator Bailhache, who was chair of the Electoral Commission, saying we should have, in my opinion, 30 senators and 12 constables. I completely disagree with Mr. Richardson. I believe in the parish way of life. I believe in the constable system. I believe in the honorary system. And I believe in the extraordinary role of the bailiff in the history of this island. As a matter of fact, I can honestly say to you, I'm as passionate as any Jerseyman or Jerseywoman about the way Jersey has conducted its parochial system, its honorary system, and its elected assembly. It needs change, but let's do it slowly. I'm associated mostly with sort of housing and planning matters, started the housing transformation programme, both as assistant minister and minister. Andrew finished that. I've been on and off the planning panel for the last 5 years. That is one of the other great poison chalices of the states. But I have directed and led a team composed of the likes of Deputy Laurissier, Jeremy Masson, Roy Laurissier, Rod Bryans, and 2 constables. And I think we've come out the other end with a semblance of success. So I believe that I've served reasonably well. I'm not afraid to take on difficult positions. I'm not afraid to take on difficult roles. I believe I can lead. I'm also vice president of the animal shelter. I started Caring Hands, Sanctuary House. I drive trucks to Romania for mustard seed, and I do a lot of other things. So tonight, listening, I hope you might consider me for one of those little 8 votes, and thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Lord of St. Ouen, good evening to you. My name is Geoff Habin. I'm a businessman. I'm a management accountant, current chairman of Jersey Friends of Air Search.
and I have a proven track record in business both here and elsewhere. As has been reported this week, our economy has stopped going down. Roughly translated as we've hit bottom. So we need to get back. We need to grow the economy. We need to do it as quickly as possible. Support is there for the finance industry, digital initiatives, tourism, but the small and medium businesses are not being supported as much as they should be at all. We need a much lighter touch. We need to look at licensing for small businesses. We need to look at the employment law for them. With a lighter touch, they will grow quicker. They can employ more people more quickly and lessen the social cost for the rest of us. But the Assembly and the community also has a part to play. We must all put Jersey first. And by that, I do mean that we should use local expertise. We should use local suppliers. Keep the money going round in our local economy and not keep disappearing out of it. Without doubt, we are going to have some immigration into the island. We can't avoid it. A lot of the skill sets have gone. For an example, we have JCG being agreed this week. We have Dundara with Westmount. I've no doubt Gas Place will get past 700 homes there. Well, where's the carpenters, the electricians, the block layers? As I've been told, apparently Highlands managed to train 13 block layers in the last 2 years. So we are going to need people. But going on from that, what we must do also with great urgency is support Highlands to the maximum level. Allow them to bring in the higher education, the university courses, as is being spoken about, and the vocational training that is desperately needed. If we can do this, it will lessen immigration pressure. It will also get our economy going as quickly as possible. And if we can get our economy going, that means the state's coffers have more income, there is less pressure on tax rises, GST rises, something we would all very much like to avoid. Wherever you look in the States, change and modernisation is needed, but the whole of the structure of the States needs to be more reactive. We need to get on with it, ladies and gentlemen. We need less debate, we need more action. I want us to get on with it. I want to be part of it. I am just a common sense problem solver. I want to represent you, and I would dearly love one of your votes. Thank you very much indeed.
Good evening, Swans parishioners. My name is Faye. As a child, I used to come out here with the family from Grouville. It was like going on safari, and not much has changed. We've all been through a pretty bad time with the recession, and to be perfectly blunt, I think we may have to look forward to potentially worse to come. But we don't necessarily have to fall back on getting everyone to pay more taxes to cover the difficulties we're in. My first response to seeing the states failing to balance the books after years of being able to do so, and now having to borrow extremely large sums of money, is first thing, back off on taxes, because the public of this island need a break after going through a difficult time. And what we should be doing is to just have a close look at the gross waste of money that the states manage to achieve on a regular basis. Let's cut back on the states wasting money. And what am I talking about? Barely had I been booted out of the states than we tackled the Millennium Town Park. Now, I know as a former transport minister, the Gas Place car park earned £330,000 a year as income. We then stick a £10 million park on top of it, ignore the wishes of St Helier residents who wanted an underground car park, and I wrote 2 letters to the paper saying, please, states members, there's an enormous hole where Gas Place used to be, please put some parking underground and then put the park on top. Utterly ignored, went nowhere. Now, with maintenance, that park is probably costing this island minus £400,000 every year in perpetuity and add inflation. This is how your states waste your money. And they've been doing it for decades. Do you remember when the money was flowing out of our ears? And what did they do? Instead of sensibly investing in pension funds, which we are not going to pay off now until 2080 at the earliest, instead of investing it in the reserves or having a sovereign building fund, no, it was handed back because, no, this is not our money, it's your money. How handy to make yourself popular for the next election. That money should not have been squandered in that way. But maintenance is a boring topic. The public are simply not interested in it, so we never did any maintenance. What's happened now? We've set up the new housing project, had to borrow £200 million to fix that. The hospital is falling to pieces. The electrics are shot, the sewage system breaks down 2 or 3 times a week. Now, I will tell you this, and I'll give you one promise. If you let me to the States, I will be honest with you. I will be straight with you. I know where the bodies are buried. If I am in the States Assembly, I guarantee you I will shake it up a bit.
Mr. Konrad, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Malcolm Ferey. This election is your chance to have your say and make a difference by voting for a new candidate who understands the problems that exist in Jersey from someone who sees the real issues every day. I believe that in the past our government has focused on personalities and personal views rather than what is in the best interest of the island as a whole. My politics are therefore centred on keeping in touch with the issues that affect the ordinary islander and professionalism in delivering the appropriate solutions. When you get a chance, I would ask that you click on my website, malcolmferey.com, and you can watch my campaign video and you can see and hear all of the issues that I believe are important. The strength of our community is what makes Jersey such a special place to live. And I have given back to this community when I served a term as a centeneer for the parish of St Helier. I therefore understand the pressures faced by the honorary police. Training, consistency in decision making and treatment of first offenders are all areas that require special attention if we are to maintain this vital community service to our island. Running hand in hand with this is the Connotabs as father or mother of the parish, and this is why I support the Connotabs maintaining their rightful place and having a seat in the Assembly. Bringing parochial issues to the heart of government and maintaining strong parish representation is, in my view, an essential part of keeping Jersey tradition and culture alive. I have worked hard and made positive changes in every position that I have held in my career so far, from the finance industry to the civil service, and I can promise that as a States member, my resolve would be just as strong. So, if you want to see a new face and have some new thinking in the States Assembly, but you also want someone who understands the island's traditional values, then please consider me for one of your votes on polling day. Talking recently to a lady who rang me up the other day, and she told me that initially she was not going to vote in this election because she was so angry with the way the referendum had been dealt with. However, after reading my leaflet and talking to me, she's now changed her mind because she believes there is new hope. I hope that you share her view. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you have heard about many successes of this government from few members on this platform. Some of them have told you interesting anecdotes of the parish history. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but don't forget, please, the purpose of this clever game is to create sense of achievement, hope, and most importantly, to give you false sense of security. What they don't want you to hear are the facts. So here they are. There's £95 million hole in the state finances, and the plans to fill this hole consider demanding £16 million from the state-owned utilities, removing £28 million from housing and crime-fighting funds, as well as cutting department budgets. 45% of islanders are stating that they had difficulty paying their bills, and only 25% reporting confidence in the government. Youth unemployment is affecting work ethic and fostering idleness among young people. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing here to encourage you, the electorate, to elect me to the office of Senator as a person above all divisiveness and free from any political alliances. I am the voice of ordinary people, and I will work for ordinary people, those who work hard every day and pay their taxes, those who are faced with problems resulting from the ill-conceived system of socio-economic policy which is unfit for purpose. Give me a chance to propose new opportunities to respond to your dissatisfaction and regret about the direction our society has taken in recent years. I will insist on resolving problems that affect each of us and tackle those challenges to improve our prospects, our standards of living. And I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that I will always be available to meet with you and to listen to your concerns on a regular basis. Ladies and gentlemen, there are key changes that I believe should be addressed tonight. Strong and proactive support of small businesses and to implement policy that will help them grow. Reform of investment and tax relief policies. Promote local people and maximize the potential to benefit all of us. Promote further and higher education along with a reform of current educational system. Support young talented people from low-income families by a system of grant and rewards. Reform of current policies and regulation of the workload. Strong support is also needed for the back-to-work schemes. Complete reform of the current property rental system. Reducing doctor fees for pensioners, people on long-term incapacity allowance and low income. Promoting our beautiful island on the international stage by further investment in tourism sector and supporting companies within the industry. Stimulating people to think green by means of implementing new recycling schemes. And creating alternative energy solutions, providing clean and sustainable electric power. And there is many more on my list. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see those changes happen, please consider me for one of your votes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the candidates for their introduction this evening. We should have two gentlemen with roaming mics. And with that in mind, could I have a first question, please, from the audience? Dr. Kish.
Thank you. The property tax proposal, the documents that have gone out, they are presented as replacing parish rates. If elected, will you ensure that the parish collecting the tax retains it all for their administration?
Okay, can we have another question, please? The gentleman in the back.
I'm really pleased to see so many people focused on the state's expenditure tonight and how it's going to change. Could I ask each of the candidates to tell me how much we spend per day running our government, please? If they turn off their taxpayer-provided laptops and iPads before doing that, that'd be great. I realise you also have an order that you answer questions in, but if Mr. Ozoff could answer last, please, because he really should know the answer.
Sorry, can I have your name, please, sir? Sorry?
Mr. Jones.
Gentleman over here.
Bob Archdale. I'd like to know if all the candidates today, when they have the referendum, whether they will comply with the result.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Could I ask Senator Sarah Ferguson to start, please?
Robert, property tax. Parish rates, yes, they're cheap and effective, and if you take the parish rates away from the parish, you, as I said, you take the heart out of the parish. It says in the review that the purpose of the review is not to raise additional revenues at this time, and then it goes on to say that if future assemblies wish to increase taxes, they can be confident that it can be done as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So, you know, it's going both ways, the review. You know, we're not going to do it, but yes, we are. But I'm against moving the rates. It's absolute rubbish. I agree with John Boothman, bury it. States laptops, the payment per states member is £600 a year. to each state's member, but they have to pay for their year's broadband with it.
Sorry, I know, it's my fault. How much does it cost to run our government every day?
Well, it's something in the order of 750 million divided by 360. I haven't got my calculator. Sorry, I haven't got enough fingers. And as far as the referendum goes, this is a true referendum. It is a yes-no question, and I will go with what the public say, yes or no. The last one was not a true referendum. A referendum is just two alternatives, yes or no, and that's it.
Thank you for the questions. The question regarding the property tax consultation process that's happening at the present time. It is just a consultation. There's a bunch of ideas which have been floated for the public to have their say on whether they think it's the right thing to do. Certainly, from my understanding, is that I certainly wouldn't be happy that the parishes would affect the parishes in a negative way, because it's important that the parishes still control the raising of the tax, and also the people who carry out the assessments as well. It should retain, be kept within the parishes. With regard to the spending on a daily basis, Senator Ferguson has identified the global amount. I haven't got a calculator with me either, but I think we can all hopefully do. I could have done it in a few minutes later down the line. Now, no doubt have the answer per day, but certainly the global figure is around the 700 million mark. But in saying that, we're going to be going to a 3-year plan coming forward from next year, and then we'll be assessing all the money we do need to spend on a fresh basis. So that figure obviously could alter. With regards to the referendum, I am wearing a yes sticker because I believe the constables should remain in the States, but if the outcome of that referendum is a no, I will stick with that and go with that referendum, because I think what happened last time was an absolute disgrace.
Million a year, 365 days. According to me, that means we spend £2 million a day down the tube of public spending. I once went to a public seminar on spending in the UK, and there was a tap and water and pouring down it. They tried to say, trying to measure the rate of public spending is like trying to turn this tap off. And it's the same analogy. The water flows down at that rate, so it's a very substantial flow. Property tax. Well, I'm certainly against changing the democratic rating system, where at the moment the Assembly chooses and approves the tax, it has control over that, the money is spent locally in the parish. The consultation paper we have launches the idea that you'll have a centralised tax, centrally controlled, with a minister setting the rate, which gives obviously a mechanism for extracting more money. I'm not in favour of that. I'm not in favour of tax based on capital property values, nor unrealised gains. That's absolutely unworkable, and it basically leads us down the road of capital gains. So I think the whole thing is problematic. There's one element in it, windfall tax on rezoned land for housing developments. I think there is an element there that has got something in it, but the rest, absolutely nothing. Will I accept the referendum? Absolutely yes. I argued for a yes-no question. The last referendum was a mess. There was no clarity about what the question was. Well, that's my view. I wanted to see a yes-no. This wasn't the question. I will accept it whatever way it goes, and I'm pleased that this is being resolved this time. Thank you.
Last question first. Referendum questions, as the other people have said, should only have a yes or no answer. And this is my question. This is what I brought to the States, because last time what we had was something a bit akin to a Woolworths pick and mix, or some light entertainment multi-choice question like who wants to be a millionaire? Referendums like the Scottish did are yes or no. Now your specific question, will I accept it? Yes, I will. I want to hear from you, and whatever you say is what I will do. That's what referendums are truly about. John's already worked out with his calculator that it's actually about £1.91 million per day, It's very easy to say, let's cut it, but at the moment, actually, we're spending for infrastructure, investing in our infrastructure, investing for our people, and getting our people back to work. It's very popular to say, let's reduce it. So where are we going to reduce it? Education? Should we take it from health? Well, I know, let's not get people back to work, let's keep them on social security. We do need to get a grip of public expenditure, but to cut it at this moment is not the right time. The property tax, as far as I'm concerned, the rates remain with the parish. It's as clear as that. Nothing more, nothing less. Rates with the parish. Constables know what they're doing. Let them do it. Thank you.
Thank you. I can give you three concise answers. I believe the parishes should retain all the income from rates. I don't believe much of what is suggested in the Green Paper on property taxes will see the light of day. Mr. Jones, your question has been answered by other candidates. I won't repeat that. I will absolutely comply with the referendum, although I will not vote to reduce further the number of senators in the states without first asking you. It's unfortunate that, well, if the result of the last referendum had have carried, we wouldn't have any senators and we wouldn't be having this hustings tonight, which might be a good thing to some of you. Thank you.
In answer to Dr. Kish, I think that Senator Ossoff has already made it clear that there are in fact no proposals. This is a green paper. There are a number of thoughts that have been put forward, but I certainly would not support any removal from the parishes of the right to levy rates or to receive the rates which have been levied from the people. So far as the question about the running costs of the states are concerned, again, I think that has probably technically been answered. But if the underlying question is whether the cost of running the states should be reduced, then I think inevitably that will have to happen in the next few years, because it seems from the predictions that income is not going to rise, or if it does, it will rise very gradually, and we will have to think very carefully about states' expenditure. Will I comply with the result of the referendum on constables? Yes, I will, whichever way it goes. I'm in favour of keeping the constables in the states. But I will add, contrary to some of the members of the states who have addressed you already, that it was indeed a scandal that members voted against implementing the previous referendum which had been put to the people. They say it was not a true referendum, but the questions were approved by the Electoral Reform Society and other professional bodies. It was perfectly clear, and if it was not clear to them, they ought not to be sitting on this platform.
Yeah, I'll answer the questions in reverse order as well. The whole point of a referendum is to ask you what you want and then implement it. No matter what the outcome of the referendum, I will support it. Second question, how much money does the state spend? It's about $2 million a year, but where does this money come from? It doesn't get extracted from another dimension. You, the people, go out, provide the goods and services, do the actual work, and that money is taken from you, and it's then spent sometimes wisely, sometimes not so much. But 7,000 is the current number of public sector employees, and that needs to come down. A lot of them do a good job, a lot of them don't. And I think that because I'm not in favour of increasing taxation, there is a limited amount of money that should be used to provide public service. And I think we should look more to automation. Senator Maclean talked earlier about high turnover within the state, and a lot of that is to do with what he called, quote, non-essential staff. I think if the staff aren't essential, why are we employing them in the first place? Onto the property tax, yeah, it has been, is a green paper, is a consultation, but as has been mentioned before, so often, oh, well, we're thinking about doing this, we might not do it, and then it happens anyway. We were also told that GST wouldn't go up to 5%, so make of it what you will. I don't think that the parishes should lose the ability to levy and organise rates. I don't think that centralising it would do any good, because the people that currently run the parishes are the people that live and breathe the parish. Taking it away from them just makes no sense in my eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. The parishes collect tax at the moment, but they don't keep all of it. There is an island-wide component to cover the amount that's taken to income support since parish relief disappeared. But I certainly believe that the parishes should retain the right to assess, collect and use the rates as at present. You need to remember that the property tax, as has been said, is just a green paper, and I suggest you read it and respond to it, although the questions aren't posed in such a way that makes it easy to answer. I think if I respond, I'll ignore the questions. There are some good things in it. As John has said, the windfall tax on land rezoned for housing is a good idea, and also I think it's a good idea to place a statutory limit on the amount of tax relief available to landlords and put beyond doubt that abusive claims for interest used to buy rental properties will not be accepted. So I think the property tax will fall, but there are good things in there that we should retain. The cost of running the government has been mentioned, but I think when people are talking about the numbers of civil servants, you need to remember that the 300 extra posts last year were mainly to employ people in the health service, and I don't think anybody would say we shouldn't have the right number of nurses. We need to remember what our taxes are raised for. Complying with the result of the referendum, yes, I think we have to this time. It's a yes-no answer, although the question should really be, should we implement clothier or not? I think you do need to...
Thank you, Mr. Southern.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, others have said the parish rate, of course, is also already made up of two components, one that the parish keeps and the other that goes back to central government, and that was a system that was set up to deal with welfare transferring centrally. There is no proposal to take it away from the parish. I don't think you'll hear anybody on this platform or any other electoral platform say that they would support that. The system works well. Yes, the valuations probably need to be looked at and modernised, but the system works well and it must stay with the parish, and we must make sure that we're doing things to modernise and strengthen the parochial system and not the other way round. My calculator is no better than anybody else's on this panel, but the truth is running government is expensive. We've got a reform programme in place, which Senator Maclean is currently chairing, to see where we can make savings, where we can cut costs. We've held salaries down, but there's a lot more to do. We hear a lot about deficits and what's happening. Yes, we know that this income has not been what we predicted. So what we've done is said that departments are going to have to live within their means, and we're going to have to do more of that into the future. That's not a problem. It's just sensible economics and it's sensible budgeting, and that is what will happen into the future. Running a hospital is expensive, running a health service is expensive, getting people into work is expensive, but I don't think there's anybody in this room that says that government shouldn't be involved in those programmes. Yes, I will, because I did before. Thank you.
Yes, as far as the parish are concerned, I believe that they should have the rights to levy rates and manage their own affairs. As far, sir, as the property tax is concerned, not wishing to exact the wrath of my colleague on my left here, I wasn't a keen supporter of the property tax consultation. It is, of course, a consultation. My concerns were that it was the wrong time to be presenting it. Quite simply, it's a matter of confidence. The mere fact we have a consultation will restrict people's likelihood of investing until the matter is solved. I didn't think it was a good time in the current economic climate to bring that forward. As far as the cost of government is concerned, we've heard the numbers, almost £2 million a day. We've got £700 million in total costs. Most of it goes on staff, about half, £350 million on staff. That was the point I made earlier on. We should at the very least be constraining the number of employees in the public sector. 8% of turnover of staff each year, 3% of those is not about non-essential, it's just quite simply that 3% of those are not in the frontline services, which are health, education, police and such like. There is flexibility, therefore, to control staff with proper vacancy management. That's what we need to do as a very least as a start. The public reform programme, by the way, is progressing. There's a good benchmark being set and a lot of good work by departments to control their costs, find more efficient ways of operating. That's very positive. positive. As far as the referendum is concerned, yes, of course I would support it. I did when the last one came around. I was one of the few who did. Thank you.
First of all, in relation to the consultation, the referendum, yes, absolutely, I supported it last time. Secondly, I have to say, of all the candidates that spoke first full marks to Mrs Southern because she got the answer right, first of all. There is, Mr Kirsch, there was an exchange with the welfare burden. When welfare was taken from the parishes, as Mrs Southern quite rightly said, there was an amount that was paid to the states, and that's £11.7 million last year, and we've been uprating that by inflation. I'm not suggesting any erosion of parish responsibility in the parish rating system. What we are saying to the constables is look at commercial rates. There's an opportunity of improving fairness. Retail rates have gone down, office rates have gone up, but all the rates assessments have been frozen at 2002 levels. That means retailers are paying more in comparison to others, and that's not fair. And so we're suggesting, if the constables want, they can correct it. On spending, I could speak all evening. The cost is £512,000 per day on health, £495,000 on social security, £293,000 per day on education, and £128,000 on home affairs. They've given you the breakdown. The reality is, sir, is that actually we're going to have to spend more money on health. I reckon we're going to spend 50 million more on health by 2020 because of the ageing society. And the big debate in this election is how we pay for that. Most of them won't say how they're going to pay for it. I say by saving and growing the economy. Thank you very much.
With regard to the property tax, I think when taxes are based locally, there's far more local accountability and a lot more thought goes into paying it, charging it, because at the end of the day the parish knows the people and they're closer to the people who they're going to have to ask that money from, so you get better value for money. And we saw this when the proportion of welfare moved from the parish and collected centrally. It shot up ever since, and I think we had far more sort of sensitive adjustments of welfare payment because the parish knew their parishioners a lot better. So I'd be totally against the rates changing. And also there's 98% compliance with paying for the rates. It's a simple system that works well. With regard to how much per day, that's obviously been discussed already. I do believe, though, when it comes to the cost of running the states, having been involved with health service development for the last 2 years, there are significant savings that we could make within health. By working, at the moment it's very fragmented and we work in silos, there's duplication and gaps. I think with joint working, less use of external consultants, more consultation with the frontline staff, we could get things working a lot more efficiently and effectively. And with regard to the referendum, yes, I'd comply with the results. Thank you.
With regards to the property tax, I don't think there's an appetite for any further taxation. I do believe that there should be a windfall tax on green zone being development, but there shouldn't be any development in the countryside as far as I'm concerned. Those vacant properties in town should be converted into flats. Those flats above shops should be made. We could then put more flats in town and make it much more vibrant. As for salaries, you remember when Bill Ogley got fired, he took those eye-watering sums. We should start cutting salaries at the top, ladies and gentlemen. We should make things more efficient. We should share some of the costs with Guernsey, as I've explained previously, especially with law drafting and other things with our local organisations like the financial services, exactly. The constables, I have already said, I think they should have their own assembly outside, but they should come in for certain debates. Thank you. That's me. Thank you.
Can I just answer on the referendum? It has to be binding. If Senator Bailhache, if you were elected and decided to have another pop at it, and he picked 6 or 7 of the world's finest statesmen to help him come to some recommendation,
I'm sure there are colleagues in the Assembly who wouldn't agree. So we've got to deal with that. It has to be binding. With regard to Mr Jones's question about the 1.97 million a day that we know it is, there is an ageing society. There is waste in the system. I know there's waste in the system. But can I remind you in this room tonight that the Deputy of St. Juan and Deputy Hilton wrote a masterful report on children and adolescent mental health and the shortfalls in that system in the last 2 months. 5 teenagers in Jersey committed suicide in the last 12 months. That area of health needs to be looked at. And finally, property taxes. On page 4 of the property tax paper, why we should consider property taxes. Taxes on property are difficult to avoid because the geographical location is fixed. The ownership and occupation of property is generally visible and easily established, which makes it relatively straightforward to identify who should be paying the tax. And finally, the supply of property, and especially land, is not very responsive to its price, which means that it can be taxed without significantly distorting people's behaviour. And I will quote from John Boothman's article in the JEP on the 24th of September. The best possible advice I can offer the Treasury Minister is to take this document outside after dark and bury it in a deep and unmarked grave.
Thank you, Deputy Power.
Few will mourn its loss.
Thank you.
If I may, I would do it in reverse order. Next Wednesday's referendum, whoever is elected into the state after Wednesday, I think ignores it at their peril. Ignoring last April was an absolute slap in the face to the public and has fostered such distrust and loss of faith. Mr Jones, yes, the states will always spend a great deal of money per day. I think the real question is where it's spent and how it's spent and maximising frontline services as a result of that. Question about property tax and parish rates staying in the parish. There's 5 people in each parish doing it for free. Central government has got to employ somebody to do that, so quite honestly, it's not broke, please don't fix it.
I think we've comprehensively covered the property tax parish rates question. For government spending, let's just look at it this way. Everybody is affected, and every day someone comes along and lifts a £20 note out of your wallet. That's how much it's costing. Constable's referendum. Well, if the... actually, can we stop calling this a referendum? Because it's a non-binding referendum, which means it's an opinion poll. The last referendum was an opinion poll. This is another opinion poll. If the poll says we support constables in the States, I will back that. If the poll says we want constables out of the States, I'll vote against that. So no, I will not necessarily comply with what the poll says. And let's remind ourselves about the previous poll. We've got a bunch of states members in the moment who don't seem to understand constitutional law, don't understand democracy, don't understand their own rules, and they are here telling you that after 20% of the registered voters voted and 80% of those voted in favour of option B, this has got to be binding on the States Assembly. I've never heard such utter balderdash in my entire life. There isn't a business with a constitution that would change its business constitution on 16% of the shareholders. Businesses require well over 50% to change their constitution. There isn't a National Assembly on the planet that is going to change its constitution on the back of 16% of the vote.
Thank you, Mr.
When
Clay.
are
Thank
these
you.
people
Thank
going
you.
to learn?
Thank you.
In relation to the property tax, yeah, having the ability to set and collect rates is fundamental to the parish system. I think people are viewing this consultation paper with deep suspicion. So now's the time to respond to it and have your say and make sure that it doesn't come in the way that a lot of people think it's going to. In relation to government spending, whatever the figure is, of course, a lot of people would say it's too much. So yes, we want all these things, we want all a good health service and we want back to work programmes, but there is slack in the system, and the slack in the system is being addressed in some way through public sector reform. But what we need to do is to stop government departments working in silos as individuals, get them to join together, get them to work together. At the moment, if you get married, you need to inform numerous states departments that that life event has happened. Now, if you could just inform one department, and there's a scheme again going forward to try and get government departments to do this and tell us once, then that would be a much more efficient way of doing things. In relation to the referendum, you've heard how passionate I am in my opening address about the Connotabs being in the States. However, in my manifesto, I've explained that if the vote is whatever way it goes, that's the way that I would ultimately vote. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I will talk about expenses, and I would be really interested to know about the daily state expenditures, but I don't know the figures. But once elected, I will tell you. Instead, I will tell you about some ministerial expenses, and these are the official figures available on the Baltic Express website. Ministers racked up well over £100,000 in travel and hospitality expenses in 2012 and 2013, with 3 breaking the 25,000 mark over the course of 2 years. Treasury Minister was by some distance the biggest spender, with £32,328 worth of expenses, followed by International Relationship Minister with £25,706.80 and Chief Minister with £25,515. 2 other ministers and 3 assistant ministers spend nothing in expenses. Up until the current Council of Ministers took office, the expenses were published annually in a report of the state, but that came to a quiet end in 2012. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have time for another 3 questions. Could I have another question off the floor? Yes, you can, briefly. Can you have the microphone?
I may have been a bit mischievous in asking about the cost of running Air Ireland. The actual cost of running Air Ireland last year was £1.125 billion, which equates to £3.1 million per day. That's a gross figure. I'm quite appalled that nobody out of 18 was able to give me the gross figure. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, the lady in the front here, please.
Jennifer Gare. Even though we don't have party politics in Jersey, where on the continuum between the political left and the right would each candidate place themselves?
Okay, can we have another question, please? Is there anybody else? The gentleman's already asked a question, but is there anybody else who would like to ask a question? It means this gentleman has already asked. Okay, so we have two new people who'd like to ask questions. Could we ask those, please? Gentleman just on the left, put his hand up.
Hi, Peter Tarrant. The EU has identified the blue economy as representing 5.4 million jobs and generates a gross added value of 500 billion a year, and it's seen as the key to achieving the goals of the Europe 2020 strategy for smart, sustainable and inclusive growth. It is targeting 5 sectors which it sees as having high potential for achieving sustainable jobs and growth, and has backed this strategy with an EU budget of 80 billion in grant funding. I have 2 questions for the state's members. Why has there been so little effort to develop the huge potential that exists for Jersey to target the same maritime growth area? And 2, why do other tax havens such as the Cayman Islands and BVI have access to EU funding for this initiative and yet Jersey doesn't?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this gentleman in the very back.
Name's Raoul Lucas. I'm just a bit concerned about the massive amount of building that you're proposing as part of the way of getting out of this recession, and if it doesn't benefit mainly people who are already resident over here, is it wise to go ahead with the scale that is proposed?
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now start with number 10, which is Senator Maclean.
Thank you. It's always good to go first. Ladies and gentlemen, the first question was about party politics and where I would sit on the spectrum. It'll sound like a cop-out, but I'm going to say probably centralist. I'm a centre politician, although I'm very happy, depending on the issue, to move one way slightly or the other. I don't really like to put labels on politics as such. I think you've got to relate to the issue in hand. Sir, your question about the EU and EU funding, of course the EU has massive debts. They have invested significant amounts of money trying to stimulate their economy. There are opportunities for us to do similar things which we have, but not at the same scale. Obviously you have to take into consideration the size of the island here and the community that we've got and the funds that we've got available. We have put money into developing different areas of the economy. The digital sector in particular is one that we've invested in more recently. We've set up an innovation fund to stimulate creativity, innovation and such like within the economy. And we have looked at maritime. You identified maritime. We've sought to expand our maritime presence and indeed outside of that an aircraft registry was set up recently as well. In the context of the size of our economy, we are doing a lot to diversify it, and driving inward investment, by the way, is the way in which we're going to generate the most revenues to help pay for the expense of the island. Finally, sir, to the back, you were asking questions about building. I think you were referring, I assume you're referring to domestic.
First of all, left or right, I think I would be known as being on the left socially and on the right economically. And so if that, sorry madam, if that answers, that's absolutely where I am. In relation to building, this is a big challenge because after 10 years of complete almost non-investment in terms of the health system, we've got to spend, I'm afraid, more money on the healthcare system and rebuild the hospital. I know there's a debate, there's absolutely a legitimate debate about where we spend it, but we estimate there's going to have to be at least 300 million spent on the hospital. Now we've got to build the capacity to do that without the population rising. In relation to diversification, we can't get EU grants because we're not in the EU and we're not a deprived area. So I do know what state spending is. Your question was about state spending. Your figure, if I may say, was including social security. And because we ring fence, unlike other countries, income from your social security contribution and lock it away so the Treasury can't touch it, well, actually most of the candidates, including me, wouldn't have done that. We have more information and more transparency on your taxpayers' money and your social security than anything else. You joked about the internet and iPads. It's all there. Hundreds of pages of information on our economy. And I believe in diversifying it, which is why I've taken the decision, along with Alan Maclean, supported by the Chief Minister and other ministers, to diversify. And we think that we should be diversifying digitally. And that means helping all of the parts of the economy to diversify digitally. Tourism, agriculture, they all can actually diversify digitally. And I think the Chairman of Digital Jersey is here.
I'd put myself in the centre too. I'm concerned about inequality, so I thought in those kind of areas I'm more towards the left, and that concerns me the fact that the Consumer Council and the Office of Statistics are saying around 45% of islanders are now struggling to pay their bills every week. But I'm very much sort of more on the right when it comes to the traditional parish and that sort of way of working. When it comes to how to invest in the economy, and you can combine that with the lots of building that's going on currently. I mean, we were at a construction meeting yesterday morning and they were saying how they'd had to lay off lots of jobs recently in the recent past because they'd had a sort of flat period. And then all of a sudden we seem to be doing an awful lot, and it's like a boom and bust cycle. I think we ought to be a lot more measured and thoughtful about the building projects. and yes, have a bit more diversity when it comes to what we do stimulating the economy, looking towards things like sustainable energy, because that's likely to go up in the future and is becoming more economical. Again, the digital and also the tourist industry, and where are our visitors going to stay, things like that. So, thank you.
I'll start with reverse order. I agree with one of the previous people who said I think we definitely need a hospital. People who come to Zion, who will come here, major wealth owners coming to Zion, will look at our systems and look at our health system, and they will need a new hospital. We certainly need one, and it probably needs to start from scratch. Other programs should be cut without a shadow of doubt. With your question as regards to the EU grants, I think if we put some money into the research, we never put any research into tidal power at all. I am very pro-tidal power if it came. Certainly coming from France, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be the French. And I think that might happen in 2018, start on a pilot project there. It will be great to see it happen, and Jersey could tap in. As for my party political side, I consider myself an environmentalist on one side, and I'm certainly, as an accountant, I'm much more to the right. Thank you.
Question, party politics. There are a group of states members who don't seem to understand that in order to distribute wealth, someone has to create it first. And then there's another group of states members that I loosely call the inner sanctum, and they sort of schmooze their way through a lot of decisions without trying to consult with the rest of the assembly. And I'm in the middle, sort of get a good kicking party, really. That's where I think I am, right in the middle of the assembly. With regard to the question on the EU and the maritime projects and grants, I sat on the Tidal Energy Commission with Dan Murphy, and we did a lot of good work there. I'm a great believer that tidal energy will come, but it's in its embryonic stage at the moment, and I think we should work with EDF, the JEC, and other companies like that. My own personal interest in the States is shipping. As you know, I was involved in the Emerald ferry thing, and then last year I was involved in refinancing what was Hewlin Renouf as Channel Island Lines now, and I believe we can work with the French in building far more better trade links than what we're doing at the moment. And then finally, the massive building reference. There are big building projects which are in the pipeline, some approved, some not yet approved, some states projects, some private projects. Who would not welcome Royal Bank of Canada investing in a massive new global headquarter building on the Esplanade? And finally, on that particular area, I believe that development should be on the line between the Grand and the Pont.
Thank you, Deputy Powell. Thank you.
Political spectrum-wise, I'm probably just a tad to the right of centre, to be honest. But there again, you don't misinterpret this, lean both ways, because it depends on the topic, to be honest. You have sympathy for what topic comes up. Stimulating the economy, I know you mentioned marine in the EU. Yes, as has been said, we have an aviation registry, which is kind of embryonic. But what has been targeted primarily in the last few years is those industries that are best fit for that which we already have, which will bring in external income, which is digital, Jersey, and obviously the finance industry. Building, does it benefit the West if it's all elsewhere? Well, for one, it's where the sites are, the housing, where you have done Westmount, JCG, potentially Gas Place, and that is taking pressure off Greenbelt, which is a very good thing. And obviously the hospital, the single biggest one, which will be in town, has to be there because that's where basically a third of the population of the island is. And that's it.
I'm a massive supporter of what I understand is described as the blue economy. We are an island, and I really don't think we make enough of the fact that we are an island surrounded by
fast-flowing tidal waters, biggest rise and fall nearly on the planet. I think we should really take a hard look at our fisheries, among other things, and certainly I can't understand why we're waiting to get stuck into marine energy. In terms of building, I'm fairly relaxed about how the island plan handles that thing. To me, it's not so much the scale of the building as to where the buildings are going. That to me seems to be the critical issue, and I haven't been majorly upset on that front. Where am I on the political spectrum? I recall a song that went, I'll be everywhere man, and that's pretty much where I'll be. I don't toe any political party line. Sometimes I'm green, sometimes I'm pretty left-wing, sometimes I'm hard-nosed right, particularly on economics. It depends on the issue. We have a States Assembly that deals on everything on a single issue basis, and I promise you I'll make up my mind using common sense and judgment as the occasions arise.
Okay, as far as political leanings, I would say I'm centre-right, but really I want what's best for Jersey, so that transcends any political leanings. In relation to EU funding, yeah, we do have some of the largest tidal races in the world. A joint venture with France would be able to harness that marine energy and would see us, go into the future for a long time with our energy needs. In relation to building projects, large building projects are a proven way of growing the economy, but the key to it is using local contractors, local work, so that that money stays within the economy and it drips all the way down and everyone benefits from large building projects. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned in my manifesto before, I'm the voice of ordinary people and I'm free from any political alliances. And my mission is simply carry out the pledges I listed in my manifesto. In relation to spendings on development, the financial situation as forecast has proved to be inaccurate and there is not much money available for public works as was anticipated. The States of Jersey are not a development company and therefore should not be spending taxpayers' money on commercial ventures for which it is felt that there is no need at this time. And I'm particularly referring here to the project of redeveloping the Esplanade car park. The Esplanade car park is already very built, Esplanade area is already very built up with a lot of large buildings. And the car park is the only open space in this area. It is stocked with trees, shrubs, plants that provide food and shelter for birds and insects, some of which needs environmental protection.
Senator Ferguson.
Right, left or centre? Well, I'm actually in favour of the old-fashioned virtues. I think we start and have our expenditure less than our income, and I think that's where we have to start. It really depends on the topic, but the main thing is for all of us to work together. If you get a variety of views sitting around the table, you will get a much better decision. Actually, Clothier recommended a minority government because we had no parties. He actually said it was to prevent the uncontrolled exercise of power by a few powerful people, so thought for the day. Peter, we've mentioned tidal power from the platform. As an engineer, I do understand the problems, and from the technical literature, it will come, but we're talking, 15, 20 years yet. I don't happen to think that the EU is a good example, because only today the chief economist at the International Monetary Fund have told the Europeans that they have to adopt an austerity program like the UK have just had for the last few years. So I think there's a lesson there. Large building projects, I wonder how much government should be doing and how much we should actually leave for the private sector. Can be inflationary.
That's it.
Is
Thank
that
you.
time?
That's
Oh,
it. Time
dear.
up. Thank you.
Thank you. The Evening Post have asked us this question to respond, and I'm going to break the embargo. It's going to be published on Monday, I believe. And I put myself as sort of centre right, but when I was thinking about it, I thought I've dreamt up a new title: Social Economic Realist. And I sort of think that social things are very important, but I know that we've got to be able to pay for it. With regard to the diversifying the economy, I think it's been spoken about that digital is vitally important, and the renewable energy, there are, I think, going to be some possibilities there for the future, but it's been spoken about our inability to get EU money. With regard to building, the building that's being proposed is building houses for our children and our local people, building modern offices for our people to work in. I mean, 'cause some of the businesses are crying out for sort of modern offices. If we don't have those offices available to them, they could up sticks and leave, because there's, they would be, they could find better offices elsewhere. With regard to the hospital, we've got to recognise that was a very large project, but that's already funded. Due to the investments and the savings that have been made from our taxes that have been raised, we've been fortunate enough to have that money available for that to happen. Obviously the concern there is...
Renewable energy, wind and tidal power. The report showed huge potential. The reports we came up with in that scrutiny said partnerships with industry, partnerships with the French, because the French can access the EU money. There's no question the French are going to do it anyway. Jersey should be piggyback on that. 14 times the energy of the island's needs from wind. Tidal will take another 10 years. Now, in principle, though, we can't access EU funds. We can't even get in the lottery. This question about building, there is a problem. We're going to have to import staff for these projects. All the reports say that, but we must train locally, and also we need to manage the flow of these projects. Housing project, a must, absolutely. We got into, allowed our state to get in a poor state. We need to upgrade it and have new. Hospital we must have. I want to see that alternatively funding. Sewage treatment work is a phased project. I think we need to slow that down, because we just cannot cope with 200 million, which that is. And I think we have to be sure that we get the full economic benefits from those capital projects. I'm not in favour of expanding offices, but government being an office developer when there is not the office demand there from the private sector. Political labels, I think they are unhelpful. If I'm forced to it, I'm on the centre. I'm an environmentalist, but also a human one. And so I see the full range and I vote on its merits. And I think on some issues I go one way and some issues on the other. And I think it's, when one looks at the UK, party labels now are pretty irrelevant. And I think they are generally. Sorry to disappoint.
Starting with the last question first, around the building. I think it's a crying shame that we've taken 10 years to get planning permission to develop college for girls. If we'd phased this much better, then we could have actually got our workforce developed, and they could be working. We wouldn't be faced with so much to do. It's a shame that we didn't invest in social housing for year after year after year. £80 million worth of outstanding maintenance I inherited. We have a plan, but we've got to change the way we educate our children as well. We've got to, at 14, allow young people who are not academic, to develop skills, so that 16, 17, they've got the skills, they've got the qualification, they just need to be improvers out in the industry, and then that will solve our problem. Keep doing the same thing, we'll keep having the same problem. Where do I sit politically? I'm in the centre, but I'm to the right on law and order. I'm to the left when it comes to helping people who are disabled, but I'm a realist as well. You have to have income before you can redistribute it to help those that need to be helped. On diversification, we need to diversify some of our existing industries. We must support our finance industry. I'm different to my other colleagues. I do see a place for renewable energy. Let other people develop it, and we'll take prototype 3 or 4 when it's been developed properly, and we can find a place to put it. Thank you.
I'd like to think we're all things to all people, and practically everybody said they're sort of centre aligned. I'm not going to sit on the fence. I'm a conservative, a caring conservative, and but I'm not a great fan of party politics. I said in my manifesto I like team politics, and I think one of the best things about our system is that we can all work together and vote in different ways. I believe I might have even supported one of Deputy Southern's amendments once upon a time. That's how flexible I am. The blue economy, we're doing something, but as John Young said, we've got huge potential, and that's exciting. And if I'm elected and I get the job I want at economic development, then that's going to be top of the list. We've really got some opportunities to develop there. Building out of recession, we have to be careful, because when we build, we import a lot of product, and that's sending money out of the economy. I'd like to make sure we keep as much of our pound in the economy as possible, because that's going to help us, and that's going to create jobs and help local people. Thank you.
In the absence of party politics, I do think labels are different, and like almost everybody else on this platform, I regard myself as in the centre. It would be a brave candidate who said that he was hard left or hard right. I like to think that I would come to a reasonable conclusion on any political question that is put. So far as the EU funding question is concerned, we are outside the European Union, and so we're not eligible for it. Gibraltar is inside, but it's liable to all the rules of the Union and has to comply with those. And for my part, I prefer to be where we are under Protocol 3. So far as the massive building is concerned, I think I agree with others who have said that it really depends where the building takes place. And because we are in St. Wands, may I just take this opportunity of saying how delighted I am that no building is going to take place at Plemmore. Yeah, I'm absolutely... I'm really thrilled that it's going to be restored to nature, and like many thousands of other people, I look forward to walking around it in due course. Thank you.
I'd like to answer the questions in reverse order. Is it wise to go ahead with all these propositions on development? I think it is location, as has been mentioned already. Dr. Cameron mentioned boom and bust cycles. Well, who creates these? The government, by picking winners and losers in the marketplace. We need to sort of break the idea that spending money stimulates the economy. Spending does not stimulate the economy. Saving stimulates the economy. If you believe that spending stimulates the economy, throw a brick through your living room window and see how much good you can do for the economy. Jersey is not part of the EU, and renewable energy is something that's not really been looked into just now. I used to work for JEC. There was Normandy 1, which is the cable between here and France. That was no good. So Normandy 2 was then built to the tune of millions and millions of pounds. That snapped. Now Normandy 3 is being built for another £75 million, which is actually leveraging the company at 50%. This is a company that you own, and I think this is Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. We do have one of the biggest tidal systems in the world. Why aren't we using it? We often brand ourselves as the sunniest place in the UK, yet as far as I am aware, installing solar panels on more than 50% of your house is illegal. Why is this? As regards to the political spectrum, I think it's an artificial construct. Sorry, ran out of time.
Yes, in terms of building, the construction industry is important. We need our capital projects. But if we need affordable housing, why are we building any other sort? In terms of where I stand politically, I think the centre is getting a bit crowded. I don't like labels either, but I'm proud to belong to a party, or a team if you like, that wants greater fairness. Of course wealth creation is important, I wouldn't deny it, but on every measure, from crime to levels of education and health, a more equal society is a happier society. I believe that we need a good health and education service, and if taxes are to be raised, they should fall on those that have the most disposable income. And if that puts me on the left of the centre, then I'm proud of it.
Thank you. Yes, capital programmes, there is still capacity in the economy to deal with what's in the pipeline. As other people have said, it's about the skills and vocational training to make sure that we can have an appropriate balance. But they are important because we're talking about affordable homes, we're talking about a new hospital and other elements as well. The blue economy, tidal energy is our future, but the technology is still in its infancy. So we've got to deal with the seabed, that's in hand, and then we've got to partner with technology companies. We talk about it when we go around the world with such companies. They're interested, but because it's in its infancy, because of our tidal range and the strength there, it will take time before it comes in. Political alignment, I like to think of myself as being, I could say centre, but everybody else has said that. I like to think of myself as being centre-right, what used to be thought of before Ed Miliband came along as old-fashioned one nation. But for me, what's important is this government has brought in long outstanding social legislation and yet at the same time put more support into financial services. Because we know, and I believe, that we need a strong economy, not for some ethereal reason, because it delivers better lives, it delivers better living standards, and it delivers jobs, and it delivers social provision for every member of our community. That's what politics is about. It's about building consensus and about getting things done, and that's why I'm standing again for Senator. Thank you.